welcome to Chef Grace's Place. Today we have Mike Strange from Bassett's Ice Cream. Bassett's Ice Cream is it the first ice cream in Philadelphia? It's from a long time ago.
It is currently America's oldest ice cream brand. There was a company that started, I think it was 9 or 10 years before our company was founded, but they are since out of business. They started in Baltimore, Maryland. Jacob Fusel was the first commercial ice cream maker in the U.S.
Wow.
Yeah,
And you
but
put them
they're
out of business, huh?
what's that?
And then you put them out of business, huh?
Yeah, well, I don't know if we put them out of business, but we certainly outlasted them.
So, how did you get into the ice cream business?
Well, I'm in the family. So my great great grandfather, Louis D. Bassett, started our company in 1861 in Salem, New Jersey. And incredibly, we have managed to pass this business on through the generations. I'm generation five. We have several members of generation six already working in the business now. So I'm hoping to keep this tradition going for at least another generation or two.
So, speaking about technology, how has the technology changed in ice cream making since then?
Well, believe it or not, it actually has changed quite a bit. Um, Ice cream originally was produced commercially on these little hand cranked batch freezers. And you take a specific amount of ice cream mix, which is your milk, cream, sugar. And at the time, originally in the 1800s, they would pack ice and salt around the canister in that ice cream churn and literally crank the handle until the ice cream firmed up. The liquid mix would firm up in the cold vat there.
So just like the cheap ones you get now, basically, like the
Yes, you can still get those hand cranked ice cream makers, and they still offer mechanical batch ice cream freezers. But really, the new technology is something called a continuous ice cream freezer. And what that means is you start with a batch of mix, and it's a big batch. Probably we usually start with 500 gallons at a time. And you pipe that mix through a freezer on one end, and it is extruded on the other end. And you just keep on pumping that mix until the batch is completely finished. A batch freezer, you pour, depending on the size of the batch freezer, anywhere between 2 and 10 gallons of mix into a barrel. And instead of hand cranking it now, you turn it by a power motor. But the difference between the two styles is a continuous freezer freezes the ice cream much, much more quickly, which results in smaller ice crystals, which arguably results in a better mouthfeel, a smoother mouthfeel. So
I don't think that's arguably. I think it is better.
it is actually. The truth of the matter is that when somebody says they're offering homemade ice cream, it is in all likelihood not going to be anywhere near as smooth as commercially produced ice cream made on a continuous freezer. So what you can do with a batch freezer is you get really creative with flavors because you're only making a very limited amount of mix at a time. And you can just put stuff in there until you get kind of what you're looking for, depending on what background ingredients are and what we call inclusions are the solid pieces that get mixed into ice cream, and variegates are what we call the swirls that get put through ice cream. So
do you use the batch freezers for your taste testing?
we actually do. And when we are developing a new flavor, we will typically run multiple batches on the batch freezer just to make sure we are getting the flavor profile right. We know once we get the flavor profile right and we run that recipe on a continuous freezer, it's only going to be better. So we use the small batch freezers to develop the flavor profiles. And then ultimately, we commercially produce the ice cream on continuous freezers. So
Yeah.
that's one big change in technology. The other big change is, of course, refrigeration. I mentioned earlier that previously, ice cream, after it was extruded from the freezer, was put into these giant chests with lots of ice and salt. And while that helped draw the temperature down, it was never as cold as mechanical refrigeration. So ice cream was always served really quite soft at our counter until we started to actually offer mechanical refrigeration.
Wow. I wouldn't even think like, because it probably wouldn't even last that long. You would have to like would you
Well,
freeze it or would you just do a new batch?
once a batch was produced in the old days,
Old days.
the
Yeah.
metal can would be dropped into a chest that was filled with ice and with salt. Salt lowers the freezing point.
Yeah.
And so it did chill it down considerably more than just plain ice, but nowhere near what mechanical refrigeration does today. So good and bad. I will tell you, there was, and you're right, it did turn very quickly. We used to make the ice cream in the basement of Reading Terminal Market. So we've had a store in Reading Terminal since 1893. So I'm jumping all around here trying to give you a little history while I'm talking about the ice cream. But after we would make a batch, and they were, I think, 3-gallon metal canisters. I remember them from when I was a kid. They would take that batch up from the basement of the market right after it had been filled, and they would drop it into the service cases up on the main floor of the Reading Terminal Market and serve that ice cream starting within minutes after it was produced, and certainly within a day or two, each can would be completely finished. It never got really hard. It was always somewhat soft. And that is honestly the best way to eat ice cream.
Oh yeah.
It release better, the mouth feels better. I personally allow my ice cream to temper to the point where it's not melted, but it is absolutely noticeably soft. I just think ice cream is so much better that way.
Me too. I'm always like stirring it in the cup.
Are
So
you
I
an ice?
rarely get a cone because I want to make it all like stretchy.
Yeah.
But another question I have for you, when I was in pastry school and we were learning about ice cream, they mentioned like the different, custard, ice cream, but then they mentioned Philadelphia style ice cream, which doesn't have any eggs. And I noticed you didn't mention eggs in your recipe. Did Bassett's invent Philadelphia style ice cream?
Boy, that's a good question. I'd say it's possible. Our brand predated Breyers. Your original question is, are we the first ice cream? And I think you specified Philadelphia. But I will tell you, Philadelphia was known as the ice cream capital of the world in the late 1800s. Breyers was founded here, Abbott's, Dolly Madison. Now, they all were founded after Bassett's. So I can't tell you we invented Philadelphia style ice cream, but we were certainly one of the early adopters. Again,
Was Dolly Madison like, was that actually from Dolly Madison, or that's just named after her?
I don't know the answer to that question. I suspect it was named after her because Dolly Madison, as an ice cream brand, wasn't founded until the late 1800s.
For the viewers who don't know, Dolly Madison was one of the first ladies, and she supposedly introduced ice cream to the White House, which is why it would be a good name for an ice cream brand. That's pretty cool. So I read online that so your mom was taking over the ice cream business before you got into it. So
Yep.
how
Yep.
did you decide to get you were on like Wall Street or something and you decided I'm gonna make ice cream?
Well, it's interesting. All the kids in my family worked behind the ice cream counter in Reading Terminal Market. That was just part of growing up. So when we're in high school, we all scooped ice cream. My college summers, I spent working at the ice cream factory, making ice cream. And I actually studied accounting and business administration in college. And out of school, I went to go work for a public accounting firm, Price Waterhouse. I had no intention of getting into the family ice cream business. I love my mother dearly, but we didn't get along at times. And I just thought it might be best if I worked for someone else. I really had no interest in working in the ice cream business. But after 3 years in public accounting, I was ready to look for a position in private industry. And my mom learned that I was looking to leave public accounting and go work for a company. And she and my grandfather took me out for dinner and basically did a full court press to say, hey, why don't you try the family business? If you don't like it, you can always move on and go to something else. So that was back in 1983. And yeah, I'm still there. So had no real intention of doing it, but my mother and my grandfather really spent time persuading me. And I'm obviously very proud to be, in the family, the Bassett ice cream family, because at least in the Philadelphia area, people know our brand.
Yeah, I noticed that like I feel like more people outside of the US know who Bassett's is than people in the US.
That may be true.
Why is that?
Well, a matter of opportunity, really. We are available, certainly widely available in the Philadelphia region, Jersey, Delaware, out into Western Pennsylvania. We also have distribution down in South Florida, Baltimore, Washington, Manhattan, Metro New York, and North Jersey. But really no further west, not really, we have no distribution in the central part of the country or the West Coast. But let's see, it would have been May of 2008. I went to a networking group. It was actually held at St. Joseph's University. And it was a conversation among frozen product distributors in the area. And there was someone who had done a little bit of international business. We swapped cards, and the guy says to me, you know what? I have a friend of mine who is a broker for food businesses into China. Why don't we all go have lunch? And I was thinking, wow, that's going to be a complete waste of time. But yes, the guy seemed like a nice enough guy. He was coming downtown and I eat lunch anyway. So what did I have to lose? Well, he brought a colleague of his in this brokerage who said he had spoken with his contact in China, and that contact was specifically looking for high-end American ice cream. So his colleague, his name's Dan Zan. He was born in China and now is a US citizen, lives here. Dan said, Mike, you should send samples of your ice cream to China, because I'm going to try not to talk up our own product, but a lot of people like our ice cream. We make a really good ice cream.
I like your ice cream.
But it is a good ice cream. It's a high butter fat. It's over 16%, relatively low overrun, which is the amount of air that you whip into the ice cream. So it's a fairly dense, very rich product. So we sent samples to China. It probably cost to FedEx them in 2008. I'm going to say $400 or $500. And I just thought that was going to be money out the window. Well, my now customer in China did a blind taste test against Haagen-Dazs, which was at the time well established in China. And the results came in very favorably. So his colleagues and he thought Bassett's was as good or better than Haagen-Dazs. And he determined that he was going to start importing Bassett's ice cream. And sure enough, after we negotiated an agreement, he placed an order for a small 20-foot container of ice cream, which is still a lot of ice cream. And I thought, well, this will be a one and done. And about 2 months after I received the first container, he placed an order for a 40-foot container. Now that is a lot of ice cream. And I was like, okay, um, heading over to China to see what the heck is going on. So it was really, I was so impressed with what my customer's name is James Sun. What my customer in China has done with our brand. He has opened several shops. He wholesales it into restaurants. He sells the pints into grocery stores. And he is now, because of the pandemic, really growing the online shipping component of his business.
Are you
So
doing online shipping in America?
we are. And that honestly, we've been doing it for years, but almost as an afterthought. But when the pandemic hit, we connected with Goldbelly, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, with any of your other interviewees are selling through Goldbelly, but
Yeah, Pat Steaks is selling through
oh
Goldbelly.
yes, sure, he's killing it on Goldbelly, I think. But we set up a landing page on Goldbelly and put together a deal with them. And I will tell you that we are now selling a lot of product through Goldbelly. It has been a great win for us, and it's something that I am convinced will continue well after the pandemic. It's something we wanted to do. We weren't doing it through a wide-reaching outlet prior to going with Goldbelly, and so our sales were limited. And really, as I said, like an afterthought. But back to my China customer, he's doing terrific. And what ended up happening was several years later, a group of folks from Korea were in the US, again, looking for high-end US food products that they could bring into Korea, North Korea, South Korea. I'm sorry, South Korea. Not North Korea, not yet.
I
And
don't think they know
I
ice cream exists
stopped
yet.
at Famous 4th Street Cookie, which is another iconic brand here in Philadelphia. They have a store in Reading Terminal Market as well. And the owner of 4th Street Cookie happened to be there when they stopped by, and he wasn't ready for export, but he said, hey, while you're here, you ought to talk to Bassett's Ice Cream. I know they're exporting to China. So, towards the end of the day, Brian Phillips, who owns 4th Street Cookie, called me up. He said, look, there's some folks from Korea. They're looking for high-end US brands. I told them about Bassett's Ice Cream. Would you be willing to meet with them? And, sure enough, we actually met with them that evening and took them over to the store. They were blown away by the product. We literally gave them spoonfuls of every flavor that we make because we offer them all at Reading Terminal. And next thing you know, we're now shipping a lot of product to Korea. And one thing leads to another. And that was the path of least resistance for us. I say that because in the US, the ice cream market is very mature. Obviously, we started in 1861, and there's plenty of other brands that have been around for ages. Brands that we compete against, Haagen-Dazs is owned by Nestle's, which is the largest food company on the planet.
Yeah.
Ben & Jerry's is owned by Unilever, which is the third largest food company on the planet. So the US market is a tough market, and then every city has their own Bassett's Ice Cream. So there's regional brands all over the country. If you're going to Cincinnati, it's Graeter's. There's not a city that doesn't have a well-loved local brand. So difficult to move into new markets in the US, but in international markets, particularly Asia, where there is less established competition, our brand is much easier to introduce and it is more readily welcomed because there are fewer other brands that we're competing against. So, very long-winded way of telling you why we sell more ice cream. We don't sell more overseas, but we do sell a lot overseas, and it's an easier market for us to penetrate.
And my best friend from college, she is from South Korea, and she knew, like, she was so excited to go to Reading Terminal, and because we went to college in Philadelphia, so she was so excited to go to
Oh,
Bennington.
that's great. Does she know the brand from Korea at all, or
Sorry, what was that?
does she know the brand from Korea or from the
Yeah,
US?
she does. Yeah,
Oh,
she knew about it before I did. She introduced me to it.
oh, how cool! That's
Yeah,
great.
so it was
Yeah.
just it was fun. She
It is
loved
you
it.
know, this is literally a, small world story. I, I'm friendly with Robert Bennett, who is an outstanding pastry chef in his own right. He was the pastry chef for Le Bec Fan, which was a renowned Philadelphia restaurant. And Bob has done some consulting work. He was in South Korea, unbeknownst to me, driving down the street when he saw a cafe, at a Bassett's Ice Cream Cafe, and did a double take. He had to stop and go in. He's like, I didn't know you were in South Korea, Mike. He actually texted me from South Korea, said, I just stopped at one of your shops here in South Korea. So very fun when you have these folks who just randomly encounter your brand on the other side of the world.
So you mentioned the overrun, the air whipped into the ice cream. Um, I know that there is a limit of how much air you can be put into the ice cream. So
Yep.
I was wondering, like those diet ice creams that are like all air, do they have to be sold as like ice cream, like fake ice cream?
If okay, so look, I'm gonna give you more than you need to know, but I can't help myself.
I like it.
So ice cream has two key characteristics, which I've already mentioned for our brand: are
Yeah.
butter fat, milk fat, and overrun. Okay, the more milk fat, the richer the product, up to a point. The more overrun, the fluffier the product, the more air that's whipped into it. In the US, in order to call a product ice cream, the standard of identity requires that the product have at least 10% milk fat and no more than 100% overrun. So the way you measure overrun is if you start 100 gallons of liquid mix and you end up with 200 gallons of finished product, that is 100% overrun. If you start with 100 gallons of liquid mix and end up with 150 gallons of finished product, that's 50% overrun. So it's the amount of volume that the mix is increased by after you incorporate the air. So to call it ice cream, minimum of 10% milk fat, maximum of 100% overrun. And I will tell you that in the US, there's a number of brands, and I'm going to tell you one in a second, but I will tell you that in our company, we call brands that are at the minimum milk fat and maximum overrun 10-100. We just call it 10-100. And we know what 10-100 is. It's the minimum, bare minimum milk fat you can put in it and still call it ice cream. And the maximum overrun you can put in it and still call it ice cream. So 10-100 is kind of a disparaging term, other than the fact that it's a lot cheaper. Breyers, which is made by Unilever. Unilever owns both the Ben & Jerry's brand and the Breyers brand. Have you looked at a Breyers package recently?
Yeah, and I try to avoid ice creams that put like oils in their ice cream. And,
So I don't. Breyers is actually a relatively natural product. They don't have a lot
yeah,
of stuff in
very.
it.
But I remember it was. I mean, now it's probably maybe 5 years ago because I used to eat Breyers because they made a lactose uh
Ah,
free one.
okay.
Not it wasn't lactose free, but they basically had like the lactate in it already, so
Okay.
you didn't have to worry about that. Um, but then after we figured out I wasn't lactose intolerant, I was eating the regular one, and I looked at the back because I went to pastry school. I started looking into the back of labels and stuff,
Yeah.
and then I was like, oh, then I started eating Bassett's ice cream, and Haagen Dazs is pretty good, and I always check the back of the label though for
So
fun ingredients.
it is. in my mind, I won't say it's deceptive, but it's a little misleading because if you look at a Breyers package now,
Yeah.
it doesn't say ice cream anywhere on the package.
Oh.
Look for a Breyers vanilla television ad. They recently have put out a television ad about Breyers natural vanilla, and you'll listen to this commercial for a half an hour. You'll see, I mean, half a minute, 30 seconds. You'll see a scoop going through really good looking ice cream. You'll see somebody scraping a vanilla bean. You'll see them pouring milk and sugar on the commercial. They don't say the word ice cream once because they just call it Breyers natural vanilla, made with real milk, cream, and sugar. Why don't they call it ice cream? Because it's not ice cream. It has less than 10% milk fat now. So Breyers has gotten out of the ice cream business. It is now frozen dairy dessert. That's what you would call a product like Breyers now, frozen dairy dessert.
What is in it then?
That same things as ice cream,
Just
just
air?
lower milk fat. So it used to be called, a product like that used to be called ice milk. Do you
Oh,
ever hear the term ice milk before?
I think my grandma might have.
Yeah, so it's an old term, but companies that would make a lower milk fat product couldn't call it ice cream, so they called it ice milk. But ice milk doesn't have real great connotations.
Yeah.
And so those companies that now make a frozen dairy dessert with less than 10% milk fat, they're just calling it frozen dairy dessert.
Because it's cheaper.
It's cheaper to make.
So
So Breyers was an independent company for years. In fact, started in Philadelphia, as I mentioned earlier.
yeah.
But they were ultimately bought by Unilever, which is international. I mean, they're all literally Unilever sells all over the world.
Yeah, they own everything from like deodorant to ice
Yeah,
cream.
yep. They're a consumer products corporation, and they are looking at every single penny that goes into every single product that they make. And I don't want to disparage a competing brand because for many people, Breyers is great. And at one time, it was a terrific ice cream. But
Yeah.
it is now, to be honest, really a frozen dairy dessert. You cannot call it ice cream anymore.
You can't even call it a 10 100 because it's not even
You
10.
can't even call it 10 100. Exactly. You know, here's another thing. I have I'll just give another example of a little bit. I'm going to call it misleading and not deceptive. I'm going to call this misleading. I shop at a local family-owned grocery store here in Philly called Klein Supermarket. And they're a Bassett's customer, have been for years. I know the owners. And one of the owners loves to kind of rib me a little bit about the Haagen-Dazs brand, which he also sells. Haagen-Dazs actually put in a separate stand-up freezer for them. And they offered, it was Klein Supermarket, and my friend over there is Shell Klein. They offered Shell a deal for 2 weeks if they sold, if Klein Supermarket would sell Haagen-Dazs, I think it was 2 for $6. So Shell makes up a sign he puts on the front of the Haagen-Dazs freezer, and it says 2 pints for $6. And I told Shell, I said, you know, that is flagrant false advertising. Why? Because Haagen-Dazs doesn't make pints. I don't know if you know this. Their container, they downsized it from 16 to 14 ounces. Haagen-Dazs does not make a pint. They make a 14-ounce container. Breyers does not make ice cream. They make a frozen dairy dessert. Now, Haagen-Dazs is owned by Nestle. Breyers is owned by Unilever. Those guys are watching every single little penny. Now, I will say, in fairness, Haagen-Dazs does make a pretty good ice cream. I really far prefer Haagen-Dazs to Ben and Jerry's.
But also talk about misleading. You my whole life I thought Haagen-Dazs was like from Europe, and then I found out it's from New York.
It's a made up name, totally made up.
Yeah.
I once met Ruben Mattis, who founded Haagen-Dazs. He and I were on a radio show together, and he wasn't shy about it. He came right out and said, "Yeah, Haagen-Dazs doesn't mean anything. We had to come up with a fancy name so that we could justify the price we were charging." That's what he said, and he was right out there about it. He could say that because he made a great product. So he didn't mind, once people tried it, regardless of whether it had a fancy name or not, they would buy Haagen-Dazs again because it was an exceptionally good ice cream. And it is still ice cream too, by the way. I'll give them that.
It's not a 10 100?
There's not a 10-100.
So then what do you call the ones that are like, I feel like it's always like the novelty ice cream that's like not, doesn't, like it has all the fillers, I guess. I guess because like oils would make it a smoother mouthfeel without, I guess that's how they're doing vegan ice cream now.
Yeah, vegan ice cream, and we have had requests for vegan ice cream. But I will tell you, we also have a wholesale distribution company. So we sell products besides our own brand of ice cream. You mentioned novelties. We sell Unilever brand novelties, and Blue Bunny novelties, and so on. The short answer is yes, absolutely. In order for a novelty, if you don't have a lot of milk fat in your product, in order for a novelty to hold up, to survive the different temperature shocks it will receive through the cold chain, you almost have no choice but to put some kind of a stabilizer or emulsifier in there, simply because a small unit like that is much more subject to heat shock than a 48-ounce container or even a pint, honestly.
So no, so you guys aren't going to make vegan ice cream, or?
So that lost my train of thought there, vegan ice cream. We have distributed vegan ice cream. And while we had a lot of customers say, "You guys got to make a vegan ice cream," I know we'll sell the heck out of it. So we started selling a brand called, it's another Philly brand. Unfortunately, they're out of business now, called Little Babies. Have you heard of Little Babies? Their claim to fame was kind of kooky, crazy flavors, and they were very heavy in vegan product. Well, we started distributing it, and what we found was the people who said they were going to take it, they'd take it once, or we get another order for it and be 2 months down the road. They just weren't selling it. Yeah. So I think, I'm guessing that a large part of that has to do with the outlets, because people who are vegan, I would think, seek out shops that primarily offer vegan products. And an ice cream parlor wouldn't be construed as something that would, I don't think, that people there where you could get a vegan product.
No, usually they would just go to like Whole Foods,
Yeah, that's what I would think. But in any case, Little Babies is out of business. So for whatever reason, vegan didn't take off for them. All of that said, we won't rule out doing a vegan product. We recently reintroduced a hard frozen yogurt, and I love this. It's a fantastic product, and we have a lot of people asking us for it. But I will tell you the truth, we're not selling that much of it. I love it. It was a tart frozen yogurt, so it's got a little bit of tartness to it. We had done a frozen yogurt a number of years ago that was low fat, but nothing exceptional about the flavor or the mouthfeel. This tart yogurt, I'll be candid, it's higher fat than you will normally find in a yogurt. We actually put as much milk fat in as we reasonably could, but we also have that probiotic aspect to it. We have a true yogurt culture growing in the mix before we freeze it. So yeah, and my opinion, it's great. Now, I guess part of it is we haven't promoted it as well or as strongly as we could have, but
What
you
else
know,
is in it? Like, what are your? Oh, what's the name for this swirl again? I forgot. Very,
uh, oh, a variegates,
very.
a variegate. So variegate, variegate. So ice cream people just say variegate without even thinking that nobody's going to know what that means. Variegate is a swirl or a ripple.
So
Okay.
what variants and inclusions do you put in your
Well,
yum?
therein maybe lies the problem because we're only doing 3 flavors: vanilla, or actually, it's not even vanilla. We're doing a plain tart yogurt, we're doing a strawberry, and we're doing a peach. So the flavors maybe aren't all that exciting. Maybe that's part of the problem. But it is an exceptional product. I just love it. We sell it down in our ice cream shop in Reading Terminal Market. And we have a nice little, square cut out on the flavor board promoting it. But I think the people come to my shop in Reading Terminal Market, they want the high fat ice cream. They don't want anything that even hints that it might be really good for you. I'm not saying our ice cream is not good for you, but I don't think that's why people are eating Bassett's. People are eating Bassett's because it brings them pleasure.
So, do you come up with the flavors, the new flavors, or
Mm,
your pastry chef?
I am certainly actively involved in developing the new flavors. And, we get asked all the time. Well, first, we get told all the time the flavors that we should make. And everybody has a flavor that they think is going to be, the next
The next.
cookie dough. Cookie dough is an example of something that Ben and Jerry's did years ago that has now become an industry standard. Everybody makes a cookie dough. But honestly, we rely mostly on our wholesale customers to drive new flavors. So, perfect example, we'll use China. Our selection of flavors, many of them are popular in China. Fruit flavors, nut flavors tend to be more popular in Asia. But one flavor we didn't make that our China customers said they absolutely had to have was green tea. So that was driven by my China customer. And developing that flavor, that took us a while. It turned out to be the easiest thing in the world to do, but we took a lot of hard steps before we figured out the easy thing.
You added matcha powder.
What's that?
You just added matcha powder. Call it a day.
That is exactly what we did. That is exactly what we did. That's all we did. If I had started with that instead of going to ice cream flavor makers and asking them for this, and we got backgrounds from people, and we got jugs of this, and I made it. And, many of them either had artificial things in them, or the color wasn't good. Just nothing about it made me want to make that flavor using those ingredients. So there's a tea place in Reading Terminal Market, about 3 stalls down from the ice cream place. So I went over there and I spoke to the owner. I said, Lynn, I am trying to make a green tea ice cream. Can you help me with that? She pulls out a bag of matcha powder, and it was the first pick. So, there's different grades of matcha. I took it over to my store, mixed it into the vanilla. We didn't even have vanilla background, but mixed it in. The flavor was spectacular. The color was exactly what I was looking for. And the only extra ingredient I'm putting in is fresh matcha powder. So really, at that point, the formulation became a question of how strong do we want it? All right. So I mentioned to you earlier that we use batch freezers to test our product. So we made a range of strengths of matcha. All right. And I put them in all different tubs, and then I would mark the bottom of these cups. So I walked around Reading Terminal Market. We have a number of Asian customers there. And I would go to a few of the Chinese restaurants, and I would be like, Stephen, can you try this and tell me what you think? And I was writing down notes from the Asian merchants in the market. And then I did a broader taste test at my counter. The way we formulate most of our flavors is when we have an equal number of people say it's too strong as say it's not strong enough. So if I sample this flavor with 50 people, I want to pick the one that 25 people said it's too strong and 25 people said it's not strong enough, or most people say it's perfect. The problem is that everybody has their own idea of what a flavor should be. And while some would say it's perfect, some will say, no, it's way too strong for me. And others will say, no, that has to be much stronger. So you have to kind of, what you look for is the median. You want an equal number of people on either side of it's too strong or it's not strong enough. Anyway, so we go through this whole process. I send it to China, big order. And my China customer says, not strong enough. So we bumped up the amount of matcha we put in next time we made it. And I think right now, I think it's right where it needs to be. So anyway, very long-winded way of saying how we develop the flavors. The hard part was already done before I was born. My grandfather took the recipe he got from his grandfather and then just tweaked it. He would walk around the market, getting different flavoring ingredients, but he also experimented with the amount of milk fat and sugar and so on that was in the recipe. So once he finalized the recipe for the underlying mix, that's the hard part. Everything else is just adding flavors, and you just add flavors till it gets to the point where you like it. So
that's why I love making ice cream.
yeah, you go crazy on ice cream in terms of creativity. There is no limit to the creativity.
Whenever we like I had a pastry school exam, like I always had ice cream because it was the easiest way to like put something, like I made like caramelized onion ice cream. Like we had to do like, whenever we had to like incorporate something crazy, I'd usually put it in the ice cream.
And how did that all turn out for you? Did any of it turn out what you would consider to be well?
Yeah, I got an A, so
Okay.
it worked.
Something.
Yeah, they were a little hesitant, but I saw one of our teachers, they were doing, I don't know what they were doing, but they were making a garlic saltwater taffy for something. And that's where I got the idea. I was like, garlic, and then I was like, oh, what about onions? It
Yeah.
was with a spicy
Yeah.
chili brownie, so worked out.
So I've had some savory flavored ice creams. I've had a black pepper ice cream, which I actually thought was pretty good.
Ooh, that was
But I've also heard of different kinds of seafood ice creams. Like there's a company up in Maine that for a week each year makes a lobster flavored ice cream.
well, that was big in Japan, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Squid ice cream.
Just for me, that doesn't hold the. I'm not big on mixing sweet and savory anyway. So it kind of depends on what you like flavors wise. Because some people like a sweet and savory combination.
Well, for that particular assignment, we had to use like savory food as a dessert, but I was really surprised at how sweet the onion. Like it was, like, oh, this could just be a fruit, like because I got them super caramelized.
Was it a Vidalia onion or a Spanish or some other
It
form?
was just a Spanish onion because it was literally like we went over to the culinary class. They were like, go get some food from them. And
Well, once you cook it down, you take a lot of the bite out of the onion. So I can
yeah,
see it. Yeah.
I love onions, so it didn't bother me. Everyone else thought I was crazy, but
All right. So now I'll ask you, when was the last time you made onion ice cream?
oh, that was the first and last time I made onion
Okay.
ice cream.
So it was good, but not that good.
Well, I had to make blue cheese one time too for a poached pear like dessert.
Mm.
Was actually came out good. It kind of reminded me of frozen yogurt with the tang. That wasn't that bad. It was good.
we've done a strawberry cheesecake, but cheesecake is naturally sweet anyway. I would imagine some other cheeses would work well in ice cream.
Oh yeah, I like I just love cheese too. Cheddar was good too. I did
Mm.
that.
You
Um,
know, the quintessential sweet and savory now, I don't know if it's savory, but sweet and salty. We're doing of course, it was a rage for the last 4 or 5 years. We do a salted caramel pretzel. So we take our caramel and salt it, and then mix it in with chocolate covered pretzel nibs that actually have little bits of salt on them as well. And you know, that's sweet and salty. There's a lot of people that like that combination.
yeah, I like that. And
Yeah.
oh, speaking of $1 million ideas for your the next cookie dough, I was thinking about the frozen yogurt inclusion. You could do chocolate covered granola, and you'd really get the healthy people in there.
Can I tell you? That's a great idea. I love
Yeah,
that idea because it'll have, if you coat those pieces in chocolate, they'll remain crispy in the ice cream.
exactly.
Which is one of the great things I love about our salted caramel pretzel. Those pretzels still crunch when you bite into them because they're chocolate covered.
Yeah, that's so
Otherwise, you get
important
obviously moisture migration.
that when they make ice cream sometimes. Like, you gotta keep it crispy. So,
Yeah.
great tool for that. Do you make all the inclusions?
No, actually, um, virtually all of our inclusions we buy from different suppliers. Now, some of them are just straightforward things like nuts. We just buy a good quality nut and mix a little butter in with it. There's these big steel pots that we put some melted butter in and mix those up for butter almond and butter pecan. Trying to think, the salted caramel, that is already, we buy buckets of caramel, and that caramel has actually already been salted. So while we are far from the biggest ice cream company on the planet, believe me, we are just a little small family owned ice cream business that happens to be sold widely in Asia. Lucky us. But it coming up with the flavors is has always been a customer driven task for us. So
So do you like when you get your inclusions from other companies, do you ever like do like collabs as the young kids say, where you oh, this is made with I don't know, 4th Street cookie dough or something like
yeah,
that.
we absolutely do, and those are great. They're fun to do because you kind of know generally where you want the flavor to end up, but you have to get there. So again, you have to experiment with how much to put in and what to put in. But one collaboration we did a couple of years ago that made just a fantastic ice cream was with Sweetzels. Now, does that name ring a bell? Do you know Sweetzels?
No?
Okay, so in the fall around Halloween, have you ever had one of those ginger snap cookies? They're probably about this big, and they're ginger flavored.
Yeah, but the really hard ones?
Yeah, really hard.
Yeah. Oh
Those are
yeah.
those are sweet. Okay. Now I will tell you, I'm going to be candid here. I've never particularly cared for them. Those were the things that would end up in my Halloween bag that would be the last thing I would eat if I ever ate them. I went right for the chocolate. But you know, some homes they put a couple of these Sweetzel cookies in there, hard ginger cookies for a 6-year-old kid. I don't think so. But we tried mixing it in with our vanilla-based ice cream, and I've got to tell you, the two flavors just worked so well together. And because the Sweetzels weren't chocolate covered and they were broken up into pieces, they absorbed some moisture from the ice cream. And they weren't soggy, but they weren't really hard and crispy, which to me was a good thing. So
You
you
could
get the
probably taste the flavor more because
yes, absolutely. You get the flavor better. And it was just it was a terrific collaboration. But many of our customers, like you, didn't know what Sweetzels were, right? So we put on our menu board Sweetzels and cream. And the problem was nobody was ordering it because nobody knew what it was. So we ended up calling it, I think, ginger snaps and cream or something like that. Because they're not exactly ginger snaps, but we could never get real traction to get that thing to take off. But it was a great flavor. And I will tell you, we will do it again for sure. It was a great seasonal flavor in the fall.
Yeah,
So
that's a
anyway,
great
that was a collaboration with another brand. And we've done a number of them over the years.
You might like those cookies better if you dip them in your tea. That's what they're for. So
Oh, do you do that?
yeah, they're done.
Oh, I never knew that. I thought they were never intended to be eaten without softening.
I mean, as far as I can remember, like it's always been a dunking cookie.
Okay.
Like in
Now,
and
I had never heard that. I know the owners of Sweetzels, and I'm going to ask them if this is formulated to be dunked.
probably not, but a couple people broke their tooth and they're like, let's dunk this.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe like Oreos, gotta dunk it.
So another flavor that we collaborated with another brand on was chocolate lace. Now, have you ever heard of the candy chocolate lace?
Nope.
It's a drizzle. There's a lacy drizzle of hard brittle covered in either milk or dark chocolate. All right. So it's called chocolate lace because it looks like it looks like lace, right? So there's holes in between the strings and so on. So my mother actually created this flavor, and it's very simple. Again, we already have the base ice cream mix, and she bought boxes of broken up chocolate lace candy pieces from the manufacturer. At that time, they were in Danbury, Connecticut. Broke them up, put them through we call it a fruit feeder, but that's what puts in all of the inclusions. And I will tell you, what amazing flavor. It was extraordinary. The problem was this brittle was really hard. And the way the fruit feeder works is it has a spindle at the bottom that mixes the hard pieces into soft ice cream as it flows by. Well, these brittle pieces, number one, they weren't uniform size, and number two, they were hard. And what happened was we had to have burned out 3 or 4 motors on the fruit feeder, blending in these inclusions. Now, I mean, it wouldn't happen every time we ran it, but after 4 or 5 runs of chocolate lace, that motor would burn out. So we ended up stopping making that simply because we just couldn't afford to keep buying new motors. But I think the last time we made chocolate lace was more than 20 years ago. We still get people saying, when are you going to make chocolate lace again? People remember it from decades ago. So, and that's what happens with our flavors. I often tell people it's much easier to add a flavor than it is to take one away. So, right now we've got about 40 flavors. At one time, I have a picture of our store from the early 1900s, and there's a flavor board there. I think there were 8 flavors on the flavor board. So you get this endemic growth in flavors because you can add them. I don't have a customer that doesn't give me a flavor idea. So it's just staving off the ideas. And then once we do add one, we're at the point where there's only so much room in our warehouse. So we have to discontinue flavors. And so we will agonize over our list of flavors. And we'll start at the bottom, the least popular ones. But then you have to ask, okay, well, who's buying it? If you're serving a restaurant chain, for instance, and it's a signature flavor for them, you don't want to discontinue that flavor because you may lose the whole chain of restaurants because of that signature flavor. And so there's thinking that goes into every flavor we discontinue. But even still, you can come up with one that you think is going to be fine. You discontinue it. And that is when you find out, Grace, how many people have made that flavor their sole reason for being. I remember we used to make a lemon ice cream and we discontinued. We hardly sold any of it. It was a great flavor, but we hardly sold any. I got a call from a guy who used to ride his bike from Northeast Philly into Center City, Reading Terminal Market, get 2.5 gallons of lemon ice cream packed in dry ice, and then ride his bike back to Northeast Philly, which is a good number of miles. And he called, he was practically crying when we discontinued lemon ice cream. And that happens. It happens with every single flavor, Grace. It doesn't matter how poorly it sells. We get enormous number of objections when we discontinue a flavor.
Because you always have your, I'm lucky that like my flavor I can get from, like, I love mint chocolate chip ice cream. That's my favorite.
Okay, we'll never discontinue that. That is a core flavor.
That's a core flavor, so like I'm pretty safe. But
yeah, you'll be safe on that one. I'm trying to think of the last, because we just introduced. We have actually a new flavor coming in on Tuesday next week, June 1st, called Chocolate Fudge Brownie, which we think is going to be a good seller. But we had to discontinue a flavor. I mean, my mandate is if we bring a new flavor in, we are discontinuing at least one and maybe two. Because we just have 40 flavors. That's the maximum. That is it. No more necessary. So we discontinued Irish coffee.
No.
No, excuse me. Did I say discontinued? We don't use the word discontinued anymore. We tell our customers that flavor is on hiatus. It's on hiatus. We're not discontinuing it. Just be patient. It'll be back. But Irish coffee is a signature flavor for Bassett's. We use Jameson Irish whiskey in it. So it is loaded with real quality Irish whiskey. And you can taste it. And for those who like Irish coffee, it is the ultimate because you've got the cream and the sugar and the coffee and the Jameson Irish whiskey, and it is excellent. But again, it has a limited following, and we had to pick something to go. So we put Irish coffee on hiatus. Well, the backstory, I don't know if you know the backstory, you probably don't. Irish coffee was my grandmother's favorite beverage, alcoholic beverage. And apparently my grandfather did something to piss her off one day. And I don't know what it was, but she was pretty mad. So he went in and formulated Irish coffee ice cream for his very angry wife. And apparently they stayed together for the rest of their lives. So it must have worked. So that was a hard one. It would be an impossible one to discontinue. We're just saying it's on hiatus. And we'll see what goes next. I could give you a laundry of flavors.
Are there any plans to get a bigger warehouse?
Yeah, I know. Yes. But the good news is we do keep increasing the size of the warehouse because our business has been growing. And we're lucky that way. Yeah, but 40 flavors, isn't that enough, Grace? It's so funny.
The custom ice cream webpage,
Yeah, that's an idea. And we've talked about doing that on our social media, inviting our consumer customers to share flavor ideas. But if we do that, then I think it's incumbent upon us to at least make one of those flavors, even if it's just the winner of the competition.
Like a seasonal, like once a year thing.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. We've done a few of those before. We partnered with Adventure Aquarium over in Camden, New Jersey, across the river from Philadelphia. And they wanted to do something to celebrate a giant alligator exhibit. His name was Mighty Mike, and this is one of the biggest alligators in captivity. And they had him as a guest exhibit at Adventure Aquarium for a year. And to launch the exhibit, they came to Bassett's and asked us if we would work with them to formulate a Mighty Mike ice cream flavor that their fans would come up with. So they solicited ideas for a Mighty Mike ice cream flavor from their group of fans. And we actually ended up making a flavor for them.
So what was the flavor?
Well, it was a key lime base with crumbled graham crackers mixed in.
Like a key lime pie. Like
Yep. Yep.
Did you do like a meringue variant?
Yeah, we did. It wasn't a meringue. Oh my gosh, I can't remember what we used for the variant.
Something.
But I'm going to tell you what the problem with it was, because we're not making it anymore. Number one, it was just kind of a feature and a fun thing to put together. But one of the things we learned is when you are using an acid in ice cream. So we made a number of samples before we actually produced this thing. But the lime, it changed the character of the ice cream over time, because the samples that we made did not taste like the larger run that we produced after a week or two. And you would probably know better than I what we assume it was the lime that changed the actual physical characteristics of the product, because it was very flaky. It was almost like
the acid could curdle the berry.
That's almost certainly what happened then. Now, but how were we making lemon ice cream? Because that was a great flavor.
Were you using lemon juice, or were you using the oil from the zest?
You know, I have to tell you, now there's an example where we were getting our base from a supplier to the ice cream industry. So they had already gone through the process of, using a zest if it was that, rather than
usually when you flavor dairy, or usually when you flavor because ice cream, for people listening, because I'm sure you know this, when things get colder, you don't taste them with your tongue as much. You're actually tasting with your nose. So the taste of lemons and limes and citrus, a lot of it comes from the zest, which is the oil part. So that's not going to curdle your ice cream. But if you're putting the juice in, obviously dairy, doesn't mix as well. So over time, I'm sure it would change the texture, especially the different fruit, like citrus fruits obviously have different levels of acid. So I'm sure limes might be more than lemons. We don't know.
Yeah. Well, I needed a food scientist to help with that one. I've always said making ice cream flavors is easy, but there was some chemistry going on the lime base. So
yeah, but you could just use the lime zest and then problem solved.
Well, you know what, Grace? I'll just call you next time. We're going to formulate a flavor, and I'll say, what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong with this?
Murphy's Law.
All right.
But yeah, I wonder if the guy went on his bicycle and tried the key lime to replace his lemon. I guess that's the thing, when you put a flavor on hiatus, you gotta but wait, try this real quick.
Yeah.
It's different,
Yes. I have another one that we recently put on hiatus, and this breaks my heart, because it's someone I'm very friendly with, who came to our ice cream shop in the Rain Terminal just once a week, but she looked so forward to her once a week cup of mocha chip ice cream.
Did you just get rid of all the coffee flavors?
No, but because we have other coffee flavors. we we have something that we call coffee fudge truffle now. We have regular coffee. And again, I've only got 40 flavors. So I got nuts, I got fruits, I got candy and cookies. And this is just endless, the number of flavors you can come up with. So I'm thinking coffee just gets 2 right now. They're just on hiatus. We haven't discontinued them. On hiatus. I keep reminding my customer service staff, our flavors are on hiatus. So I'm not going to say discontinued again. But so she would come in for this cup of mocha chip. And before we got rid of the mocha chip, as we always do, we run through our customers to see what wholesale accounts are taking the flavor and see if there's a compelling reason why they really need to continue to get it. And we didn't see anybody that absolutely couldn't survive without mocha chip. But as soon as we discontinued it, I'm at my store in Reading Terminal Market, and my friend comes up and I start looking at the menu board, and it occurred to me, oh, I never told her we were discontinuing mocha chip. And I saw her. I said, Len, I am so sorry. I completely forgot about it. We had to put mocha chip on hiatus. Oh boy, she was very disappointed, is all I can say. It just never fails. It doesn't matter how poorly an ice cream flavor sells. When you discontinue it, you learn just how passionate some people are about that flavor.
I mean, 'cause sometimes it's just like that's your flavor,
Yeah. I'll banana, chocolate marshmallow, which is one of my favorites. Lemon, obviously. We did one called Orange Choco Flake. These are great flavors. There's nothing wrong with these flavors. It's just that there is a limit to how many you can make, and we feel compelled to introduce a new flavor, at least one new flavor every year. So, let's just say we have a large stock of flavors we can go back to if we run out of ideas, which we won't.
You're gonna have to do a greatest hits collection with the
Yeah,
plate or something. That's funny.
yeah, I like that. We will.
So I feel like I've been talking to you for 2 hours. In a good way. In a good way.
My problem is when you get me started talking about ice cream, I do. I like being in this business. Let me tell you, it's more fun telling somebody you're an ice cream maker than you manufacture dental drills.
Or that you're an accountant.
Yeah, that's
I
pretty
see
bright.
that. It's a song. I don't know, but it's so funny. It's about like when you go to a party and like you don't want people to talk to you, like tell them you're an accountant. Like
Oh. Unless it's tax time, then they're willing to talk to you.
Yeah, they'll talk to you. But it's a funny song. But
yeah, ice cream's a much more fun business to be in. It really is. People like ice cream. Most people really like ice cream. Some people are insanely passionate about it. But I would say anybody who enjoys ice cream, they associate it with warm memories. Okay, it's connected with a happy time.
nostalgia, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you make a lactose-free flavor? I forgot to ask you.
Yes. So, well, it's not ice cream. It's sorbet. So our sorbets are non-dairy, and if somebody has a lactose issue, we do direct them to the sorbets, but we don't do a. We touched base on vegan. I won't spend a lot of time talking about, but you can make vegan with coconut milk, soy milk, oat milk. There's a number of different bases.
Banana puree.
Banana puree, I think that probably would work.
I tried to do it.
Good. Yeah, but none of them honestly give you that luxurious, silky mouthfeel that a high-fat ice cream will give you. There's just nothing like it.
The banana puree, when you mix it with I think I did coconut cream. So it had just the fat, but also guar gum added to it.
Mm,
That will get you close, but
mhm.
it's not the real thing. Because it's also it's not just the mouthfeel when it's as it's melting. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
the banana puree will make it like thicker, but you
Yeah.
also don't want it too thick. And sometimes, they got to be super ripe bananas. They can't be, starchy at all. But but anyway,
Well, if we do a vegan, I will take that under advisement because I think you're right. That banana could really be a nice component.
yeah. But then also the problem is you got that background banana flavor.
Yeah, and that's actually a bit of an issue with coconut backgrounds. Not so much with oat and soy, but you can impart some flavor with coconut milk and coconut water, and it's hard to mask that. But again, it depends on what flavors you're making, because stronger flavors will, to some extent, mask the underlying coconut. Little
Yeah,
baby,
chocolate and stuff. But, you can't make a vanilla without
no,
it tasting like coconut.
no.
But,
Well, you can, but you just have to hope people like coconut while they're eating it.
yeah, but I mean, if it's because you're a vegan, then that's your problem.
I guess so.
So thanks for coming on the show, and we got to come back because it's fun. I love talking about ice cream. Oh, I got
Uh,
another question before I leave. You gonna do a CBD ice cream when it's legalized?
we've gotten that question a few times. Again, no shortage of people coming up with ideas, and a number of people have presented that idea to us. Maybe I'll say maybe.
Maybe.
I won't rule that out. CBD is good for you, right?
Yep. And then
There,
then it's an easy transition when the other side is legalized.
yeah, yes, it'll make it much easier where you are. But yeah, I think there's actually, I believe there are some CBD frozen desserts on the market now. I don't know of any in the
Used to
Philly
make,
area.
you know, the other side when I was in college, ice cream. So it's good. It works good with I used to call it magical mint chip.
Yes.
And
So there was a book. For the life of me, I can't remember the title, but it was by a reasonably well-known author. And in it, there was one paragraph. I was actually doing a search on Amazon for Bassett's ice cream, and at one time they were excerpting from books on Amazon. I don't know if they still do. And up comes a book with a quote about Bassett's ice cream, and it was, you know what the name of the book was? Reefer Madness. And
man,
in it, one of the protagonists went on to, there was a discussion among a couple of the characters, and one of them said, the best ice cream to have when you're stoned is this little company out of Philadelphia called Bassett's Ice Cream. Their chocolate chip is the best ice cream to have when you're stoned. And I have that book. I ended up buying the book and put it on my shelf because I just thought that was such a out of nowhere, in the middle of a book, somebody's mentioned Bassett's ice cream.
that's
Obviously, it
awesome.
pertains to eating it while you're stoned, but still.
But that's probably one of the most famous books in that niche. But yeah, and mint chocolate chip. That's the way to go.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Love to do it again. It was good talking with you, Grace. Thank you.
Talking with you. All right.
Take care. Bye bye.